Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of your favorite podcast with your favorite hosts of all time. We're really happy you're here. I'm here with John, and today we've got a fun one for you. What are we going to be talking about?
Well, those little aquariums they're all the rage right now. Everybody loves the little aquariums, particularly smaller planted aquariums, which us snobs in the business like to call nano aquariums. And today, we're going to talk about the best fish that you should put in those tanks.
You should know that, as usual, unlike the one where we did best cichlids, I am completely unprepared. I have no notes. We're just going to go off the top of my head. I have feelings about nano fish. I have my ones that I really, really love. And we'll just kind of figure it out as we go. As always, want to hear from you. If you've got a favorite little tiny fish that you think everybody must keep and must have, leave that down in the comments section below so that we can all share our favorites. So I'll start it with you. Do you have one that comes to the top of your mind, like one that if you were going to keep a little tank, something that you'd be like, oh yeah, I got to have these?
I do, but I don't want to go with the obvious ones right up front.
Okay.
I want to go with one that I don't think it's going to be controversial, but I just think it has the coolest name in all of fish keeping. I know that sounds ridiculous, but hopefully this will make sense. I am talking about the Dario, the Scarlet Badis.
Wow. Okay.
Now, the reason why I said controversial is because they can be little tyrants. They can be little mean things. And so you may be limited to only having them in the tank, but they're teeny tiny little super aggressive fish that are bright red and super colorful. And they have the coolest name, Dario. Who doesn't love that?
Yep. I actually I've probably still got, it's a big tank. It's a 125, tons of plants and wood. I put like 3 or 4 in that 125, and they tend to be a little bit shy, and I don't always see them. So I think they're still in there, but I haven't really been like, let me go look specifically for them. The only downside I see them is, at least for me, I cannot get them to convert to anything but live food. And so I've actually imported them a couple of times, or imported them once, but maybe I had I imported Dario twice, but 2 different species. And it was always live baby brine for them. You want to hear something cool. So this fish that you've picked, this little tiny red fish, is gorgeous. I had them broken up into 2 10-gallon tanks. I probably had 100 of them in a 10-gallon. And it was the coolest thing ever, seeing all those little tiny, vibrant red fish. They were fine because they were overstocked. They didn't mess with one another. And again, it was a quarantine situation, and they came and then they went out right away. But that's a great fish with a lot of personality for a fish that's not even going to hit an inch.
Only being able to feed them live foods, that's the first time I've ever heard that.
Yeah,
I'm not arguing with you.
Yeah. I've never been able to get them to convert on anything but live.
Interesting. Yeah, that's new to me. It's been a while since Lisa and I have had them, but I've just always been enamored. They're just bright red. They're just the coolest little things. And I'm being silly about the name, but it is a pretty fun name to say. A lot of people just call them Darios, or they just call them Scarlet Badis. But I just love calling them Darios because that's what I heard Rachel O'Leary call them 15 years ago, and it's just stuck with me ever since then.
Yeah, they're great fish. So if you're looking for something that's really tiny with a ton of personality, and they always just look like they're thinking. So they have that cichlid sort of personality about them without actually being a cichlid. And they're just awesome. They're awesome little fish. We had them actually one time. We had a pair in a 3-gallon bookshelf tank, and that worked out very well. And so there was enough plants in that tank where if the female was just like, you know what, I don't want the male chasing me around and looking to make babies right now, which we never got them to breed, but it was a great little setup because they are very small fish and they are reclusive. So they do like that, a lot of cover, if you will.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe Lisa and I just did it wrong, keeping them individually, but not individually, but in tanks by themselves. They can get aggressive towards other fish, though. right? That's why I described them as maybe a little controversial, because a lot of the fish that I'm assuming we're going to talk about today are like community fish. You can mix them
Yeah.
together with a bunch of other stuff, but with the Darios, not so much. Am I wrong there?
Well, it depends on the size of the tank, right? So if I had a 5 gallon tank and I wanted a Scarlet Badis in there and the other fish in the tank didn't have, they were going to share the same area, there could be some issues there. But if I had maybe a 10 gallon, I wanted to keep one in there, and then I wanted to do a school of some type of a schooling fish midwater, I would feel perfectly fine with that. Like I said, I dumped at least 4 to 6 in that 125. But it's, first of all, it's a 125, and second of all, you got a ton of fish that naturally are schooling mid to upper water. The Scarlet Badis just isn't going to go to that level usually. They're not going to travel that far away from the bottom of the aquarium to go mess with anybody else, especially schooling fish that have so much space to swim around, because they're not fast swimmers and they're not intentional in terms of like bolting across an aquarium or anything like that. So in a small tank, especially if you're trying to keep multiples, that would be a bad idea long term. And maybe if you had fish that were going to inhabit their general comfort zone, that could be not great if it was a smaller aquarium.
Gotcha. It's been a while since we've kept them.
Yeah.
So
So mine is one that has become increasingly more popular over the last probably 5 years or so, and I used to import thousands of these things, is the Rummy nose Rasbora, otherwise known as a Sabwa Rasbora. It's not the Rummy nose Tetra. It's not what I'm talking about. Rummy nose Rasbora, especially the males. And the nice thing is you can actually import them, and a lot of fish stores and wholesalers just import the males. They're the ones with all the color. They have a beautiful blue body, orange face, orange tips to the fins, max out maybe around 1.25 inches or so. They're very methodical in terms of the way they swim. They're not super active. So it's not like they're going to be shooting back and forth in an aquarium. A 10-gallon would be more than enough for them. I like to keep them in a big group in a 20. In the Nano 125 I've been toying with the idea of putting like 100 in there just because I think it would just be awesome. They are stunning fish. And like I said, over the last certainly 5 years, they've become increasingly popular. For a while, when you would import them or when fish stores would get them, they'd get them on the larger side. My recommendation to you is if you buy those fish, try to buy them when they're on the larger side, because they've kind of been through some of the trials of life, so to speak, and they're going to be a lot hardier. The smaller you get them, the more risk you have with those fish. But the nice thing is the pricing has started to come down as well, because they do breed. They will breed in your aquarium if you can find the females. The females are kind of like a greenish tint, but the males are the ones that are super striking, easy to feed, easy to care for, very hardy. Like I said, we'd bring them in by the thousands. If they were larger, survival rates were certainly above 90-95%. If they were smaller, then it was hit or miss. Right? If I was bringing in and they were like, oh my gosh, these things are tiny, they're like a half inch, they were a little bit harder to get to survive, and maybe it was a little lower. So get them larger, great fish.
interesting. That's fun.
Yeah.
And that one's like all of them that I can think of are like super common. Everybody's heard of them. Everybody's probably tried them. So that's a nice little curveball there. I would not have come up with that one off the top of my head. Now, what are we classifying as a nano tank? Because I have a fish in mind, but I don't know if it'll qualify.
A nano tank or a nano fish?
Nano tank, because
So a nano tank to me usually is like 10
5
gallons or
gallons?
less, right?
Okay.
But I mean, you could make an argument that anything less than 20, it just, I don't know if anybody's got this is a nano tank, here's the clear cut definition. But in my mind, I'm thinking certainly less than 20 gallons, usually 10 gallons or less. And a nano fish is usually not going to get much above 1.5 inches, right? After that, it's probably a medium-sized fish in my brain.
Okay. Because, see, I didn't know if we were going to call nano tanks like 5 gallons and lower, because if that were the case, then this next fish that I was going to say would not work. I mean, you're not going to put these in a 5 gallon. The silver tip tetra.
Ah,
I do think now I've had them, I've loved them. And correct me if I'm wrong. I was perfectly fine putting them in a 20-gallon tank. I don't
Sure.
know how you feel about them, but um, I wouldn't put them in a 5 though. So
No, no.
that's why I wanted to get that clarification, because you do want a nice big group of them, but a group of those in a 20-gallon, forget about it. You're gold. But there's probably a lot of people that are going to argue 20 is too big to be considered a nano tank. But we're just talking little fish, and silver tips, they're going to be in that probably like that inch and a quarter range. Or am I
A little
wrong?
larger, maybe inch and a half, inch and 3/4 the most.
Maybe I've just never gotten them that big.
Well, you want to hear a crazy story about those fish? So I brought in those fish as an import. I think I had like 300, and I chucked them in a 40 breeder. So first of all, what's cool is the males and the females they have different coloration. So that's pretty cool. They still all have the silver tips, but you can clearly differentiate between the two. But I watched them do something I haven't seen fish do before, freshwater fish. And that is, when I first got them and I put them in this tank for quarantine, I walked up to the tank and I think I startled them. And normally when you startle fish, they just kind of like all freak out if they're schooling fish and just kind of go to one back end of the tank. These didn't do that. Instead, what they did is kind of like the Finding Nemo tornado, and they all swam around and formed like this odd shaped, like angled tornado. And I was like, I wanted them to do it again. And so I went and grabbed my phone and I was like, all right, let me give them some time to settle down. I'm going to try to, and I couldn't get them to do it consistently. It was the coolest thing ever. And I always tell people, when you've got these fish, they act a certain way when they're individual. They act a certain way when you put them in small groups. But then when you get them in massive size groups, there is yet another tier of potential fish behavior. And it was the coolest thing. I mean, and I'm disappointed in myself that I never got it on video though, because it was
Oh, that's
awesome.
cool. I've
Yeah.
never heard of anything like that either. That would be fascinating to see. I love this fish, and it's one that the silver tip makes sense why they call them that. I mean, it stands out from across the room, and that's what I love. Small fish, and there's people that may argue that these aren't really nano fish, especially compared to the next one that I was going to say. But with really teeny fish, you're not going to be able to notice anything from across the room. But a silver tip, you can see those silver tips on the fins, and it just stands out from far away. They're not the most colorful thing in the world, but they don't need to be, because I love that the schooling behavior that they have, and I love the silver tips. It looks like a bunch of little dash marks swimming around. I just absolutely love it. So probably my favorite fish on this list, if I'm being
Wow.
honest with you.
Okay. Yeah, it is a cool fish. And it is one that, like you said, you can notice from across the room. My next one is probably one by weight, one of the smallest fish that we're going to talk about today, if not the smallest. And that
You're going to
is,
steal mine. You're
I
stealing
don't,
mine.
all right, hold on. Is yours a schooling fish?
Yes, I think, aren't they? I,
So
it
mine
doesn't matter.
definitely is. All right.
I'm pretty sure. I've never really, in 30 years, at 51 years old, I've never really understood the difference between shoaling and schooling.
No, I
And
kind of use those terms interchangeably. Are they fish that
yeah,
kind of swim around together? So I'll say this, and if I say it and it was on your list, I'm going to let you take it over. Okay.
no, it's fine. We're partners here. It's fine.
So I was going to go with the chili rasbora.
Okay, that's not what I was going
All
with.
right. So we're safe. Okay. So the chili rasbora. And the reason why I chose that is it's extraordinarily tiny. It's a little tiny skinny fish that has way more color than a fish that size should have.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's three fish that are very similar: the chili rasbora, the dwarf rasbora, and the mira rasbora. They all look similar. I think out of the three, the chili is the best looking. However, out of the three, I would say the dwarf rasbora is the hardiest. But these are all fish not even an inch, probably 3/4 of an inch. They're little tiny fish. This is one where, I know it's going to sound crazy, you could take 10 of these, throw them in a 5-gallon, and be like, I've got room for more, right? We've done it. We've done 10 chilies, miras, dwarfs, and throw them in a 5-gallon tank. And you're like, that's overstocked. A 5-gallon can't handle fish. Okay, well, let me know how it looks to you when you do this, because these are absolutely tiny. When I used to import fish, these are ones where you and I were talking before. Like, dude, I heard you say you've brought in 500 of something. Yeah, it's these guys. So it's really easy to bring in 500 or 600 of the chilies, the dwarfs, the miras, put them in a 40, and you're like, these actually don't look too bad. Like this could be a situation here where it's a little crowded. I'd probably thin it out a little bit, but they're very, very, very small, extremely peaceful, pretty easy to feed, mostly well adapted to a wide range of water parameters. Like I said, we were keeping pH of 8, GH and KH at 10 degrees, not really any issues there. Your biggest concern with fish that small is making sure you don't have even medium-sized fish in an aquarium that could eat them. But very intense color, really awesome. Surprisingly, the prices have come down on those fish, but depending on where you go, if there's something that's not immediately always available in your area, I think it's one of those fish where pet stores unfortunately take advantage of customers who want those. I've seen them priced as high as retail $8 to $10 a piece, and I'm like, ooh, ouch. I remember at the swaps we'd sell them for like $3 or $4, and people were like just taking as many as they could. I'm like, I'm surprised that they're going for so much more in other places.
I am reminded of a trip that I took. We talked about House of Tropicals earlier. I don't know if we talked about it in this episode or the last one, but we had this whole event planned where we met up with Rat Cross, who his channel used to be The River Life, and he's got like a bunch of channels. And then I'm not sure if you remember King and Queen Cichlids.
Sure.
Do you remember them?
Oh, yeah.
Scott and Liz. So we met up with them. We had lunch. We did our whole thing, and it was Lisa's birthday weekend. So we went to the Baltimore, Maryland area, and we went to see Discus Hans to buy Lisa some discus for her birthday. And then we went to House of Tropicals. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up, Liz, Scott's significant other, I've never seen a woman so delighted to find fish in my life. I've never seen this. And it was chili rasboras that, like, she had never seen them before. Of course she had, but she was so giddy about these fish, and she bought like 12 of them, and it was like she'd never seen them for sale before. Like, she found this diamond in the rough, and it was just so entertaining to watch. I was like, you're getting that excited over chili rasboras? I mean, they're cute little fish, but wow, that is another level of excitement. But she was absolutely tickled, and I'm pretty sure she paid like $4 a piece for them.
That's not bad. That's a good price.
Yeah, that would have been 2019 though. So
Okay.
it's been some time, but yeah, I mean, I agree though. They're like little swimming grains of rice. They're just the cutest little things, and definitely fit into that nano category more than silver tips do.
You can't get much more nano than the chili dwarfs or Mira rasbora. You can't out nano those.
That's true.
It's hard to do.
I've got one that's close.
Okay.
I mean, my recommendations are off the top of my head. I did jot a couple of them down just for the sake of not making myself look like an idiot. But it's another one that's really tiny, and it was the one that I was saying, and I'm pretty confident they're a schooling fish, but CPDs.
Oh yeah, for sure. That was going to be on my list too.
Yeah, and they're going to be maybe just a fraction bigger than chilies, a little bit bigger than chili rasboras, but yeah, I love seeing them in a little teeny group. It's just like a little swarm. I love it. I mean, they're a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and like lengthwise, they're about the same as a chili rasbora. They just get a little thicker, but the CPD, Celestial Pearl Danio, otherwise known as the Galaxy Rasbora. This is another one. We used to bring them in by the thousands, and it's a gorgeous fish. Imagine like a salmon. You know, it's got that blue with the white spots in a package that is not even going to reach an inch. Absolutely wonderful fish. I found them again. That's another one like the Rummy Nose Rasbora. The larger ones tend to be healthier. So again, if you're at a pet store and you're choosing, you've got these little tiny ones, they could still be okay. But if you can find them where they're getting closer to adult size, those are going to be the ones that are probably going to last, be more adaptable to your water parameters, and get through your quarantine process a little bit easier. Super easy to feed. Absolutely love them. Unlike the dwarf emerald rasbora, which is very similar. It's the same fish, only with not the same fish, but it's a similar looking fish. It just has vertical stripes. The emerald dwarfs tend to be a lot shyer, where the galaxies will be a little bit more outgoing. And for sure, one of my probably top 5 of the nano fish. I mean, if you imagine having chilies and the galaxies slash CPD in the same tank, where you've got that intense blue and then you have that really intense red and purple. That can be a very striking combination.
I love the idea, but my eyesight is so bad I wouldn't know which ones are which. I would just be like, oh, look at all the cute little fish. I wouldn't be able to tell the difference between them. Lisa has a whole bunch of CPDs in a little 5-gallon, and they've just always been so much fun. They're just little teeny. She's got them in with a bunch of shrimp, and they just do their thing, and they're the cutest thing. Super densely planted tank, and the CPDs are just all over the place, and I mean, at least hers, I feel like this is a normal thing. They're not all over the place, like super active.
Right.
They're just kind of looking really cute wherever they're at. And you see these little tiny fish all over the place.
Yeah.
No brainer. Absolutely love them.
100% agree. Is it my turn? Or is it your turn?
I said CPDs, so yeah, it's your turn.
Oh, okay. All right. Next one for me. Really awesome. The green Kubotai Rasbora. So the green Kubotai Rasbora, as the name implies, this is extremely rare when you think about it in freshwater fish keeping, to have a truly green fish. And there is no fish on Earth on the freshwater side that is more green than the green Kubotai Rasbora. It almost looks fake. It is so fluorescently green. I've had people say, is that one of those glowfish? No. This is the way they look. They are insanely bright green. And it just offers something so different to an aquarium. And so if you take that fish and you mix it with the ones like the chilies or the galaxies, you have a very striking fish that's going to max out again, inch or less. Nice schooling fish. Unlike the chilies, unlike the galaxies, they tend to be more active. They definitely tend to be more active. I have heard some people say these are also, for a nano fish, maybe a little bit more on the aggressive side, just because they'll chase each other around. Sometimes you put them in a tank with enough plants and structure, and I think they work out just fine. I've never really had any issues with them. The only potential issue, if you've got water that's on the harder side with a higher pH, you may start to notice your green Kubotai Rasbora just slowly start to fade away. Like, oh, I bought 20. A few months later, I've got 16. A few months later, oh, I'm down to 10, right? So it's one of those fish where if you're closer to neutral or slightly less, that's going to be a better option for you. But there are a few fish that are more vibrantly colored at that size than the green Kubotai.
That's a new one to me. Lisa is more involved with the nanofish than I am. She may have those. I don't know. I don't know if she does, though. So that's another one. I told you when we had this idea, I was like, I'm going to be leaning heavy on you for this one because you've kept a lot more of these than I have, because all the fish that I like to keep would eat all of the fish that we're talking about today. So I only like to talk about fish that I really have experience with, or I just turn it over to you. So, and I have two more that are on my list that I'm going to save one because it's the biggest no-brainer of all time. But, we're talking fish, but can we talk about something that's maybe not a fish but goes great in nano tanks?
Sure, of course. Yeah.
I mean, it's shrimp, of course.
Yeah.
And for me, it doesn't need to go any farther than just straight up red cherry shrimp. The easiest out of all of the shrimp to keep in my experience. They'll breed like crazy, and they just add another little level to the tank that's amazing, and I love it. And 6-7 years ago, if you would have told me that I'd be saying that in front of hundreds of thousands of people on YouTube, I'd have said you were crazy. But it's because every time I ever tried to keep shrimp, they would always just die. But we've had a lot more success with them basically since we moved here, which is weird. We moved somewhere with harder water and we've had more success with them, but they've done really well for us, and they multiply, and they're just fun. I mean, even with my bad eyesight, I absolutely adore them.
Yeah. And I love them. All the Neocaridina and the Caridina are really awesome as well. They just require a lot more care. So the Neocaridina will do better in hard water. They will do better at a pH that's approaching 8 like ours is. You mentioned the cherry shrimp. We have had a breeding a 40-gallon breeder packed full of blue dream shrimp now for years, and absolutely love that one. Joanna just got some pumpkin shrimp that are also new, so orange, which
Lisa
were
has those.
stunning. We've had the yellows as well. The mistake I made one time was I got the black neocaridina and then I put it in a tank with black sand. I was like, that was ultimately the dumbest thing I've ever done. So basically, you didn't even see them anymore. There's the snow whites. I mean, there's so many different colors, and they're fascinating. Now, the one downside is if you start mixing all those colors together, the offspring eventually start to revert back to brown, which is not necessarily the most attractive thing in the world. So if you're getting different colors, it's always best if you've got multiple tanks. Hey, I'm going to separate these and just keep the oranges with these guys and the yellows over here and the reds over here and the blues there. And it can really, I like that you went with that because it just offers something completely different to your aquarium, which is super cool. And by the way, all the fish that we've talked, with the exception of the Scarlet Badis, all the fish we've talked about so far, perfectly acceptable to keep with shrimp. The Scarlet Badis, I would not, just because they would eat the shrimplets, but the rest of them are all shrimp safe and very awesome. And it's just nice having that different activity, right? Where they're kind of just picking at stuff with their little hands. And when you see little shrimplet babies, they're almost impossible to see. And you're like, what the heck is that little white spot? Like, oh my gosh, it's shrimp. So cool.
They're just so entertaining because they never stop. They're just picking and picking and picking and constant. I have a 20-gallon tank it's in my bathroom, but right outside of my office, and heavily planted. We've got guppies in there, and we had some kind of a rare Danio that I don't even remember the name of. I've only got 2 of those left, but lots of plants in there. And Lisa was like, I'm going to give you some of my cherry shrimp. And I was like, oh, great. That's cool. She brought in like 5. And I was like, well, that's not going to do anything. But it was a matter of, I don't even know. It didn't seem like any time at all. They were everywhere, all over the place, all over the plants, and just nonstop. Absolutely love them. And again, there was a time, in fact, I had Rob on my live stream, Rob Lupton from Flip Aquatics, the premier shrimp retailer. And he did a whole live stream with me about shrimp. And that would have been in like 2016, possibly even 2015. And even then I was like, there's no way I'm going to do this, but I want to share this with my audience. But now I just absolutely love them. I can't get enough of them. And we have the same ones you were talking about. Lisa has the Blue Dreams, which she has in a bowl with no filtration, no nothing, just plants. And as a matter of fact, all it is dwarf sage in the Diana Wallstead method bowl, and the Blue Dreams are just out of control. And she's got the pumpkins and the yellows. It's just so much fun. It's so much fun to see these little teeny things, and it's something different from the fish. So love it.
Yeah, that's cool. So my next one is going to be a little odd. It's probably not one that most people would consider. It is the 7th smallest freshwater fish on Earth, and that is the Florida least killifish. And so the Florida least killi is tiny. The males are lucky. You're lucky if you get them to 3/4 of an inch, usually closer to a 1/2 inch. The females, about 3/4 of an inch. And they are Livebearers, so imagine if like, oh, you know what? I'd really like some guppies or some Endlers, but, well, you know what? I want something a little bit different. The Florida least killi is that different fish. I remember Joanna had a breeding group in a 2.3-gallon bookshelf tank, and it looked like they were in a 55-gallon, right? I mean, it was just, they had more than enough space. For the most part, they are micro predators, so they will eat shrimplets, but they're not big enough to eat adult shrimp because the adult shrimp are larger than the largest of the Florida least killifish. So they don't breed out of control. There's a couple different types. There's a standard, which is kind of like a brownish fish with like a black stripe. But then you have the gold Florida least killifish, and that's a very striking fish. So if you've got a 5-gallon, trust me, you've got more than enough space for a breeding group of these Florida least killies. And they're kind of inquisitive. So they look all around. If you can hear that, that's the dogs going crazy upstairs. So we're all just going to have to get over the clicking of them being excited that Eli is home from school. This is the pandemonium I live with on a daily basis when I'm down here trying to record videos, and the click, 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 click. So I think they're
I've
ugly. But
got
anyway,
I've got 4 dogs and 15 cats. My wife has. So
wow,
trust me, they're not all in
15.
the house, but they're spread all over our whole property. We've got cats everywhere. My wife runs a cat rescue, so trust me, this is not something that bothers me. That noise.
Gosh. So you said 4 dogs?
Yeah. Yep. I've
Wow, I
got
don't think I can
my
deal with that.
Well, one of them is a barn dog. She stays in the indoors in the climate control, but we haven't gotten her in the house yet. And she's a big dog. And then we have the beagle and 2 chihuahuas. So
Oh, okay.
they're all 3 big noisemakers, but they're not. They could all easily be eaten in one bite by your dogs, but
Yeah, yeah.
uh,
Mine's an American Bulldog and an English, and
yeah,
they
they're
are.
much bigger.
Yeah, yeah. But they're pretty chilled out because they're getting older now. The American is 8 years old. The English is 7. English Bulldog, she's still a nutcase, but the big guy, he just literally, the dog will sleep 22 out of 24 hours a day if you let him. He'll just be like, I'm perfectly content sitting here sleeping. Oh, I got up, I walked to the window. I should probably fall asleep again. So that's his life. Uh,
That's our beagle. She's that way. She's 13, and she sleeps. She might be lucky to be awake for a half an hour a day.
I don't know how they do it. Like that's literally, and then it's not like, oh, you know what? You just don't take it out. I could take him out and be like, you want to go for a walk? And he's like, I don't want to do this. In fact, I stopped last year because the pace at which I walk used to be fine. Like he'd be like, oh, I'm all into it. And last
Can't
year I
keep up.
noticed the second half of our walk, it was just a couple miles, but he'd be like, I'm like, dude, I'm not having to like pull you. What is going on here? He's just getting older. He's like, I'm not into this anymore, dude. Just leave me alone. I'm like,
Let me
okay,
sleep.
yeah. So that's his life, but whatever, that's fine. Yeah. So the Florida least killifish, they're a little bit harder to find. They are, as the name implies, they are local to the United States, and people do breed them. But you might not always find them at a pet store. You might have to go out and find like a breeder somewhere that breeds them. But really cool fish. If you want something different, that's not the typical Rasbora. That's going to be for a small tank. There you go.
That is a fish I am not familiar with. So you taught me something today. Never even heard of. Of course, I've heard of killifish, but
Yeah.
never that one. So this is why I love working with you. It's a lot of fun. Uh, I've got 3 more,
Okay.
but they're all like no brainer. You know what I'm saying? Like
Sure.
nothing that nobody's ever heard of. They're all no brainers. So I don't know if you want me to save them for the end or if you're ready for me to just figure out what order I want to talk about them in, because they're all.
Bring it.
The first one, I'll tell you, the first one you just mentioned in passing, and that would be Endler's Livebearers.
Yeah.
Love them. Very similar to guppies, but I think cooler than guppies. I'm not going to say prettier than guppies, but cooler than guppies because they're so different as far as their fins and stuff like that goes. But am I wrong in saying they're significantly smaller than guppies too? I
No,
mean,
they are definitely smaller, a lot
yeah,
smaller than puppies. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, I've had hundreds of them over my 30 years, but so you would think I would know that right off the top of my head, but I don't remember things because I'm a stupid person. But super colorful, super active, super easy live bearers, so they're going to reproduce for you. I love them, and easily 5 gallons or smaller. Maybe not smaller, but I don't know how small you would go with the tanks, but easily 5
You can do
gallons.
5. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say not smaller than 5s though.
No, probably not, but a 5 gallon would be perfectly fine.
Yep.
Yeah.
I I'm not going to tell you I prefer them over guppies. Guppies are one of those things that are hit or miss. People either love them or hate them because they say I can't keep them alive. I've got magic water here in North Carolina that keeps guppies perfectly fine. So
Yeah.
guppies aren't a problem for me, but Endlers to me, they just stand out over
Yeah.
guppies because they look so much different.
Yeah, I agree. The coloration is a little bit more intense than an Endler compared to a guppy, which makes it pretty cool. And again, they're small, easy to feed, breed like crazy if you got them really, really happy. Keep them in a 5, certainly a 10. You could wind up with a whole mess load of Endlers in a very short period of time, and they're not super difficult to get rid of because most people have the space for a fish that small, and because of the coloration they attract the eye at a pet store, and so they're always like, hey, yeah, I can, if you got some ones that are nicely colored up, you can certainly take those for sure.
Well, and they're not as common as guppies, so they'll be looked at as, oh, that's something unique, even though they're not really unique, but they're, they're not as out there as guppies are. So,
Right.
yeah, I've just always had a thing for them.
Yeah.
You're up.
So I'm going to summarize. I'm going to make this a group as opposed to each individual species, because this could be an entire podcast on its own. And that is the Pseudomugil Rainbowfish. And so we're talking about the Gertrude eyes, or maybe the Celebes rainbow. I know the thread fins are not Pseudomugil, but like the thread fin rainbow. I love the blue eye reds. That's probably my favorite. And that was another one where when I was importing fish, we'd import those things many, many hundreds at a time, and I could not keep them in stock. We'd bring them to the swaps. They'd go right away. If you are looking for a small fish, that's usually, the thread fins are probably going to be the largest, but their mouth is extremely tiny. You're looking at a fish that's around an inch that is going to be very active, give you a different sort of look, usually with very, very striking eyes, like the blue eye reds, as the name implies. It's basically a red little tiny rainbow fish with these striking blue eyes. The Gertrudes have super interesting fins along with bright blue eyes and really pretty coloration. And so all of these Pseudomugil type rainbows, very small, very active, ridiculously peaceful. So you want to keep that in mind. Open water, mid-water, upper water swimmers. I have the Gertrudes in the 125 Nano tank behind me, probably just a half a dozen or so, but they are mostly, and they're mixed in with some blue eye reds, and believe it or not, they like to swim around together. But they're not a schooling fish by any stretch of the imagination, but they do like to be kept in groups. But they're just more of the guppy Endler sort of personality, but something unusual. The threadfin rainbows are really awesome. Tiny, tiny, tiny mouth, but they have, as the name implies, these big, long fins that are quite striking. They get a little larger than the others, but still pretty small. I mean, you're still looking at usually less than a couple of inches. So, but as a group, that is a must for me when it comes to nano fish.
At this point in our upload schedule of this podcast, I have already announced publicly that Lisa and I are venturing back into the realm of selling fish again. And I just got to tell you, you're giving me a lot of really good ideas because I've been doing this a long time and my memory is just terrible. And there's so many fish that I forget. Like, you put me on the spot. If you give me 24 hours, I can put you a list together of my experiences, but I forget so many. And, that's why I'm glad to have you, because you remind me of these things. It's like, oh yes, yeah, I got to remember those. With us selling plants and another thing that I'm going to be talking about, it only makes sense to be keeping a lot of these nano fish available for customers. So that's very exciting. And if they work in your water, they're probably going to work in mine. So, so that's exciting. It's giving me so many amazing ideas. You're making me money and you don't even know it.
Wow. Look at that.
It's funny how that works, isn't it? You didn't know you were paying me with your words.
My words that are coming out of my mouth.
Poop coming out of your mouth. Anyway, before this goes downhill, I can't get in trouble. There's two things that I have to bring up in this conversation of nanotanks that if I didn't say, I would probably be risking my marriage. Because, I mean, how could I not talk about snails in a conversation about nanotanks? Maybe not your biggest mystery snails are going to fit in a 2.5 gallon, but 5 gallon tanks and higher. How are we not going to talk about snails, mysteries, nerites, ram's horn snails? I value my marriage too much. I have to make sure I bring that up. You did a whole podcast episode beautifully with her, talking nothing but snails, and we sell probably 5,000 snails a month. So it's, of course, I'm going to bring those up. A little biased, sure, but also value my marriage.
And they're cool. I mean, again, it's giving you, like the shrimp, it's giving you something different to look at. And I would have no problem putting a mystery snail on a 2.5. In fact, Joanna, when she had her nano wall of 2.5s, it was always a betta and a mystery snail. That was in every single tank. So perfectly.
Well, you just took my last one. Jeez. Sorry. Go ahead.
Betta?
Well, yeah.
All right. Well, then, all right. Well, we'll just move right into that one. So yeah, mystery snails are great. Lots of different varieties. Same with the nerites. Great color. Not super easy to breed unless you want to. If you try to breed them, you can breed them. not the neorites. The neorites takes a lot more effort, but the mystery snails, if you're someone who's like, I don't need a tank full of snails, get a mystery snail. If you notice an egg clutch at the top of the tank, get rid of it. If you want them to breed, keep it in there. So snails are great. You've got one more, and you said it was the betta. Tell us all about the betta.
Well, I'm not a snob, so I call them betas still. You fancy fish people, you pronounce it betta, but
The beta.
if I'm being honest, I've tried my whole life. I've tried to switch to betta, and I just can't do it. It just doesn't sound right to me.
Well, you better start.
But I don't think there's a better example of a small fish tank fish, even though betas might be the biggest fish we've talked about here.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But they're still going to be so perfect. Now, I am not somebody, you can argue with me on this, but I don't think you will. I'm not somebody that would put them in a 2.5 gallon tank. All due respect, again, value my marriage too much, so it's 5 gallons or more. Is what I would recommend for betas or bettas, depending on how smart you are. Just come on now. I mean, with the varieties, whether you go with plaquettes or crown tails or veil tail, whatever it is that you're going to get, there's so many different ones. We used to sell them like crazy, and it's a long story of why we got out of that. But it's not a long story. Our supplier tripled his price. There you go. That's why we got out of it. We couldn't see ourselves charging $100 per fish for betas. Like, that's just outrageous. So, but yeah, there is no better nano fish, but not as nano as all of the other ones we talked about.
Yeah, full of color, fin varieties, you name it. And the personality of all the fish we've talked about, this is the most personable fish by far. And I mentioned, Joanna had a wall of 2.5s that had a betta and a mystery snail. She did move away from that just because her original plan was to breed them. And then once that was like no longer a thing, she's like, yeah, I want to give some of these bettas more space, because depending on the betta, some of them, if they're really inactive, just because they all have different personalities, a 2.5 is fine. 5 gallons, definitely better. It's safer and larger. I mean, people are always like, can I keep them in a 75 gallon? Like, I did. And they're perfectly fine there too, as long as you don't have fish that are going to fin nip them or anything like that. But yeah, it's a solid option, and it's nice because now you're dealing with a fish that really doesn't need a filter. So you get some plants. Make sure you got a heater. A lot of people make a mistake of getting a betta and then keeping it at room temperature, and then it stops eating, and then you're like, what's going on here? Well, your fish is freezing, and now it can't digest its food, and it's sitting at the bottom of the tank, and it's going to die soon because you didn't put a heater in the tank. So do all that stuff, because otherwise you run into some problems.
The unfortunate thing is, the reason why people do that is because they go to PetSmart or Petco and they see them sitting on the shelf counter or on the shelf in a little cup with no temperature, and the air conditioner's full blast in there, and so they just think, well, that's normal, we can totally do that. And that is Fish Store's failure of betas. I'm sorry, I'm not going to go on a long rant, but it is definitely true. I also understand why it's done the way it's done, because who has, dozens and dozens of little tanks that they can put betas in? So I get it, but it doesn't mean I have to like it.
Right. Absolutely. So my last one is a little bit different, because everything we've talked about so far are, fish that for the most part are just kind of swimming around your tank and they're mid-water. One of my favorite nano fish is the Habrosus cory. So you've heard of the pygmy cories. I'm sure a lot of you. That's a very, very tiny cory cat. The Habrosus is only slightly larger, but it is more of a true bottom-dwelling cory cat scavenger type fish, where the pygmies tend to also swim around a lot. Habrosus are really fun colors. They're kind of speckled, going to max out right around maybe an inch, slightly larger. You can keep them in groups, super peaceful. Really awesome fish. And again, you're getting that cory cat behavior, and as long as you've got at least a 10-gallon tank, you can keep 3 or 4 of them together and not have an issue. That was another one that was really fun. When I quarantined them one time. It's when I still had the 33 longs, and I had a couple hundred in there, and that was a lot of fun because they spent a lot of time together, and they'd all kind of swim from one side of the tank to the other. It was cool.
I would imagine dropping like a little wafer, something
Yes.
sinking in there, and watching a swarm. That would be entertaining to see.
That was always the most fun when I would bring in all the Cory cats is the North Fin kelp wafers. They almost universally went crazy for them. And I would just drop them in there and they would do this Cory cat tornado and just devour that thing. And then pretty soon it'd just be gone. Like, oh, put another one in there. They would just keep doing the same thing. It was cool. It was fun to watch.
That's fun. My wife is upset at Cory cats right now, and has been for a while. But she's got a few, and so we're not Cory cat haters by any stretch. But I'm not allowed to comment about Cory cats anymore.
It's a sore spot, huh?
I mean, she's just, again, I value my marriage quite heavy,
Understand.
a lot.
Understand.
But I don't know that I have any more that jump out at me as far as nano fish. I mean, there's probably 500 more.
Yeah, I mean, we could go on forever, but a lot of the fish that I would have basically the same personalities as the fish we've already talked about. Ember tetras come to mind. It's basically like a green Kubotai, except they're orange. That's a really super hardy one. The lamp-eye Rasbora, which almost nobody has heard of, is a silver fish with blue eyes. That's one of the best schooling fish I've ever seen. The brilliant green Rasbora is a really, really tight schooling fish. That's another one that's got true green to it. But yeah, I mean, there's the list can just go on and on. But I think what we've done is we've provided everybody with a nice, solid list of fish. And hopefully for a lot of you, maybe you've heard of a lot of these, but maybe there's one or two where you're like, I want to check that one out and learn a little bit more about it. Maybe try to find them, because a lot of the fish that we're talking about are not always the easiest things in the world to find. So, but they're cool. They're worth it.
The question for you is, how long are nano tanks going to stay all the rage?
I don't ever see it going away because they're so convenient, right? What's made nano tanks popular is the fact that we've made nano fish more available. And 10, 15, 20 years ago, you were kind of stuck. If you had a 10 gallon, you're like, all right, I got guppies, I got Endlers, and that's about it, right? And then you're trying to shoehorn fish in a 10 gallon that don't belong. But now, the Rasboras were around, but they weren't prevalent like they are today. The smaller tetras are around. You can find so many more options, and I think that's what's going to make the nano tanks and the planted thing basically a permanent fixture in the hobby.
I don't disagree, but I've also seen things go up and down in this hobby where I'm like, there's no way this is ever not going to be the most popular thing ever. And then 5 years later, it's not the most popular thing ever. But then 5 years after that, they are again. It just kind of goes up and down. But I agree, the convenience of it, being able to stick one on your bookshelf in your office and, enjoy this fish keeping hobby even when you're at work and stuff like that, I think is going to make them to where they're not going anywhere. They're going to, there's even saltwater nano tanks now. I mean, it's definitely something that I think is here to stay, which 25 years ago would have sounded ridiculous to me, because everybody was like, we've got to get bigger, 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 bigger. And now it's the exact opposite. But I think it's cool. I love it. I never thought I would be that way. But nanofish, nano tanks, very cool. I love them.
Yeah, it's very cool. And again, if you've got some nano fish that you absolutely love, like, I can't believe you didn't mention these guys, I want to hear about it. What are your top 5 nano fish? Put those in the comments section, because what's cool, because I know the people who, like me, when I watch YouTube videos, I will sometimes just start scrolling through the comments within the video itself, and every once in a while, like, man, I'm actually picking up more info from the comments section than the video. So put your knowledge down there, if you will. And as always, thanks for hanging out with us this week. We will be back same time, same place next week. Have a great week, and another good week, and a week after that, and let's say week 400 more times. And we'll see you next week when the week is over.
We'll see you in a week. As of next week, we'll see you in a week. With the week after that, and then the week. What are we doing
everybody.
here?